Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday morning worship service brought to you from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. I am Deb Gogniat, and I will be helping to lead this morning's service. I joined UUCY 26 years ago, and there are many reasons that I find this place special, but I have a really neat one to share today, and that was Cleanup Day, which was held yesterday. Our Building and Grounds chair, Deb Lord, had organized and put together this comprehensive day of lots of work all over the property, and we had, I think, around 50 or more people here, and lots of work happened. But on top of all that good, hard work, lots of conversation and reconnecting and laughter, and it was just a delightful day. Oh yes, and we had food. Thank you to all who brought food. And this was us doing what we do best, which is community and spending time together. And it was just like a shot in the arm after this long winter, and truly a great way to spend the day. And one of the reasons why I love this place are moments like that when I feel a part of a really special community. We are fortunate to have this place, and we are fortunate to have each other. We dedicate our service this morning to our mother, the earth, in recognition that next Thursday, this coming Thursday, is Earth Day. It is this coming Thursday, yes. Will be celebrated throughout the world as trees begin blossoming and give birth to new leaves, and as bird songs return to bring grace to our senses. It is right that Earth Day is marked early in the spring. Spring is nature's reminder that as long as there is life, there will be new life, abundant and fresh, bringing hope and joy even in the midst of struggle and despair. And so, in the spirit of our covenant, to affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part, we are very grateful to everyone who is able to join us this morning. Our mission here at UUCY is to be a transformational faith community that serves the religious and spiritual needs of a wide and diverse group of people. A community that earns recognition as a leader in the work of social justice and guides our children to become more engaged globally. Welcome back. As is customary, whenever Unitarian Universalists gather together, we begin by lighting a candle in our chalice. Our candle flame represents the flaming chalice that is a symbol of the living tradition of our faith. We also invite everyone at home to light a candle as we share our chalice lighting words together. Our chalice lighting words today are by Reverend William Schultz. We affirm that every one of us is held in creation's hand, a part of the interdependent cosmic web, and hence strangers need not be enemies, that no one is saved until we all are saved, flourishing with equality for all, where all means the whole of creation.
Oh yeah, you can switch the background.
Where did Louisa go?
Ready!
Everyone is here. That's really cool. Okay, guys, let's just do it at the same time. Ready?
We're a generation trying to be heard. We fight with our voices, we fight with our words. There's a situation we cannot ignore. Let's not hurt our planet anymore. It's a beautiful world that we're living in. We don't want to lose one more living thing. It's a beautiful world, but it needs our help. Let's stand as one. This fight is real. Help us help our planet heal. We're a generation growing up to learn.
Well, good morning again, everybody. Welcome to our Earth Day Sunday morning service from the Unitarian Universalist congregation here in New York. My name is Reverend Terry Cummings. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and it's wonderful to be with you all again this morning on this beautiful, beautiful Sunday. It's so great to know that so many of you have shown up. I know that you could all be in your pajamas drinking a cup of coffee now instead of being on the service with us, but wait, many of you are in your pajamas sharing a cup of coffee now. I guess that's the sign of things to come when we do gather again in person. I'm sure that many of you will still choose to stay at home, and you will be welcome to do so. It's just wonderful that you are here with us, whether you're in person or whether you're at home with us in spirit. It is wonderful to see you, and it's wonderful for me to serve you as your minister. And today, in anticipation of Earth Day next week, our service is dedicated to lament and also joy and also peace in honor of the Earth Day celebration. And words of gathering are a poem by the African-American poet Langston Hughes. It's called Earth Song. It's an earth song, and I've been waiting so long for an earth song. It's a spring song. I've been waiting long for a spring song. Strong as the bursting of young buds, strong as the shoots of a new plant, strong as the coming of the first child from his mother's womb. An earth song, a body song, a spring song. And I've been waiting long for an earth song. Langston Hughes, everybody. Welcome to our service. Please enjoy Gretchen playing For the Beauty of the Earth.
This is the ancient forest. This is the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. These are the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. These are the tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. These are the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles, that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. These are the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles, that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is a hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles, that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the woodpecker, searching for ants that started in the hollow of the tree, home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the saucy, chattering squirrel that scolds the woodpecker, searching for ants that started in the hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that haunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles, that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the hungry, stealthy martin that stalks the saucy, chattering squirrel, that scolds the woodpecker, searching for ants that started in the hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in an ancient forest. These are the fir cones that fall from a branch and startle the hungry, stealthy martin, that stalks the saucy, chattering squirrel, that scolds the woodpecker, searching for ants that started in the hollow in the tree, home of the sleepy owlets, that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest. This is the 300-year-old tree that grows from the fir cones that fell from a branch and startle the hungry, stealthy martin, that stalks the saucy, chattering squirrel, that scolds the woodpecker, searching for ants that started in the hollow in the tree, which is home of the sleepy owlets that are fed by the owl that flies at night, that hunts the voles and mice that tunnel and eat tiny underground truffles that grow on the roots that draw food from the soil to nourish the 300-year-old tree that grows in the ancient forest.
Thank you for that story, Matt. We come to the moment in our service when we ask you to make a financial contribution to the church. Your generosity helps to defray UUCY's operating expense and also helps our organizations and our community that are engaged in work that is in keeping with our Unitarian Universalist principles and values. We also want to provide a reminder to those who have not returned their pledge form for the upcoming year to please do so as soon as possible, like in the next few days, please. Our Share the Plate partner during the month of April is the Queer Trans People of Color Advisory Group, which acts as an advisor to the LGBT Center of Central PA's Board of Directors. They offer monthly meetings to discuss the needs for queer trans communities of color and plan events and programming by sharing ideas and building community to support each other. We ask that you please be as generous as you can. No donation is too small. Your financial gifts will be used wisely and well.
one final candle for all of our unspoken joys, all of our unspoken concerns. May the joys be magnified by the sharing and the concerns and sorrows diminished. May it be so.
Light a candle for peace, light a candle for love, light a candle that shines all the way around the world. Light a candle for me, light a candle for you, that our wish for world peace will one day come true. Light a candle for peace, light a candle for love, light a candle that shines all the way around the world. Light a candle for me, light a candle for you, that our wish for world peace will one day come true. Sing peace around the world. 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 Light a candle for peace, light a candle for love, light a candle that shines all the way around the world. Light a candle for me, light a candle for you, that our wish for world peace will one day come true.
Our reading this morning is from Greta Thunberg's book, No One is Too Small to Make a Difference. My name is Greta Thunberg. I am 16 years old, I come from Sweden, and I speak on behalf of future generations. I know many of you don't want to listen to us. You say we are just children, but we're only repeating the message of the United Climate Science. Many of you appear concerned that we are wasting valuable lesson time, but I assure you that we will go back to school the moment you start listening to science and give us a future. Is that really too much to ask? In the year 2030, I will be 26 years old. My little sister, Beata, will be 23. Just like many of your own children or grandchildren, that is a great age. We have been told, when you have all of your life ahead of you, but I am not so sure it will be that great for us. I was fortunate to be born in a time and place where everyone told us to dream big. I could become whatever I wanted to. I could live wherever I wanted to. People like me had everything we needed and more. Things our grandparents could not even dream of. We had everything we could ever wish for, and yet now we may have nothing. Now we probably don't even have a future anymore, because that future was sold so that a small number of people could make unimaginable amounts of money. It was stolen from us every time you said that the sky was the limit and that you only live once. You lied to us. You gave us false hope. You told us that the future was something to look forward to. And the saddest thing is that most children are not even aware of their fate that awaits us. We will not understand it until it's too late. And yet we are the lucky ones. Those who would be affected the hardest are already suffering the consequences, but their voices are not heard. Is the microphone on? Can you hear me? Around the year 2030, 10 years, 252 days, and 10 hours away from now, we will be in a position where we set off an irreversible chain reaction beyond human control that will most likely lead to the end of our civilization as we know it. That is, unless, in the meantime, we make permanent and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society that have taken place, including a reduction of carbon dioxide emissions by at least 50%. And please note that these calculations are depending on inventions that have not yet been invented on scale, inventions that are supposed to clear the atmosphere of astronomical amounts of CO2. Furthermore, these calculations do not include unforeseen tipping points and feedback loops that are extremely powerful methane gas escaping from rapidly thawing Arctic permafrost. Nor do these scientific calculations include already locked-in warming hidden beyond by toxic air pollution, nor the aspect of equity or climate justice clearly stated throughout the Paris Agreement, which is absolutely necessary to make it work on a global scale. We must also bear in mind that these are such calculations, estimations. That means that these points of no return may occur a bit sooner or later than 2030. No one can know for sure. We can, however, be certain that they will occur approximately in these time frames, because these calculations are not opinions or wild guesses. These projections are backed up by scientific facts concluded by all nations through the IPCC. Nearly every single major national scientific body around the world unreservedly supports the findings of the IPCC. Did you hear what I just said? In my English, is my English okay? Is the microphone on? Because I'm beginning to wonder. Thus ends our reading.
Earth Day is a day to celebrate and to lament. In Shakespeare's play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Titania, the queen of the fairies, bemoans the effect of climate change on the seasons. I should note that I have always said Titania. Some of you may say Titania. Titania, Titania. I think there might be a song there someplace. Here's what she says, Titania, the queen of the fairies. The spring, the summer, the childing autumn, angry winter, change their wonted liveries, and the mazed world by their increase now knows not which is which. It's noteworthy that Shakespeare did not include a part in this play for a character who denied that there was a problem. But 420 some odd years after the play was written, there are people who are denying there is a problem. Evidently, the Elizabethans may have been a lot smarter than we give them credit for. The environment and nature are sources of great passion and pleasure for we Unitarian Universalists. We show up at countless events wearing t-shirts saying things like, "Hug your mother." Our congregations set aside portions of their property for community gardens to grow food for local causes. Every congregation I've served has had such a garden, and including our multi-acre UUCY campus that we mentioned earlier has a wonderful community garden where we share food and produce with local charitable causes every year in great quantities. I'm so proud of you and all of us for that work. We UUs also tend to just love being in the outdoors. Many of you these last few months, as we've been closed indoors with the pandemic, have gone on, I know, some wonderful nature hikes together to enjoy nature, but also to grow and build community, be together during a time of great trial and struggle. We Unitarian Universalists also do the hard work of climate justice. We take risks in standing up for environmental issues. Starting in 2016, for example, hundreds of Unitarian Universalists from across the country and dozens of clergy went to the Standing Rock Indian Reservation in South Dakota to demonstrate against the building of the Dakota Access Pipeline, a pipeline that will stretch from northwestern North Dakota all the way to Illinois, a pipeline that risks awful pollution problems with leakages, but also will be routed through ancient tribal burial grounds, sacred grounds to the indigenous peoples. Since 1989, our Unitarian Universalist movement has sponsored the Green Sanctuary program. This program provides leadership, structure, and support for our Unitarian Universalist faith community to engage in an ambitious environmental justice and climate justice movement. In 2011, under the leadership of Paul Duryea and Rich Burrell, UUCY was certified as a Green Sanctuary congregation. Some of us who are on the Zoom service this morning may remember the steps that Rich and Paul led 10 years ago to achieve that. And this past Friday, I had the pleasure of speaking to both Paul and Rich about what they did, and it was just lovely to get caught up with them. And recently, the UUA, our parent organization, the Unitarian Universalist Association, launched its latest iteration of the Green Sanctuary program called Green Sanctuary 2030. And I invite and encourage all of us to check that out and maybe revisit whether we should be renewing our Green Sanctuary certification for this church. I, as a minister, would be thrilled and delighted to support that effort. Like most Unitarian Universalist congregations, our Sunday worship schedule is filled with honoring and celebrating holy days and holidays, including Earth Day. Earth Day was first designated on April 22nd of 1970. That's 51 years ago. It's an annual event to demonstrate support for environmental protection, a day to honor the earth, and also a day on which we acknowledge the need to work for peace. It is a day to celebrate and to lament. With all of the bad news about environmental degradation and the effects of climate change caused by human activity, it might be hard to find reasons to celebrate Earth Day. I understand that. But it is, and there are reasons to celebrate. Earth Day is an opportunity to express our love for the pale blue dot that is our planet Earth. Some of you may remember that in a service last year we played a recording of Carl Sagan describing the pale blue dot and seeing that tiny pinprick of blue light just vanish from sight as a satellite left our solar system. A pale blue dot, so beautiful and green and yet so lonely, moving through space at 10,000 miles a second with no help in sight. It's all we have. It's also a time to celebrate hope for the future. We have reason to hope because regardless of the climate change deniers and the other forces working against environmentalism, more and more and more people are engaging in the conversation, thinking to act locally to affect things globally. More and more people are concerned, and we see it in the news every day. There is much more engagement around climate justice and environmental degradation, and in that there is hope. And we have reason to hope because on his very first day in office, President Biden signed an executive order that committed the United States not to leave the Paris Climate Accords. That is a reason for hope. And we have reason to hope because there are young people like Greta Thunberg leading the next generation into a world of more responsible behavior and greater awareness of environmental issues. There are many, many reasons for hope on this beautiful spring, sunny morning. But that doesn't mean that we should close our eyes to the ongoing destruction of our planet's ability to sustain life. Our eyes remain open even as we lament, grieve, and celebrate. Our celebration of Earth Day comes with the knowledge that climate justice and social justice and racial justice are closely interconnected. Black and brown communities throughout our country are much more likely than others to be exposed to the effects of pollution in the air and water. These are burdens that arise from the location of waste disposal, sanitation, power generation, and heavy industries right next door to black and brown communities and sometimes right in the middle of them. Our first and second principles call upon us to support efforts to ease the environmental and economic burdens placed on those communities, affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of every person, as well as justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, call upon us to work for climate justice and environmental justice, as well as racial justice in our world. I know that you don't need me to convince you that human activity has had a devastating effect on wildlife and on the plant kingdom. Last year in 2020, many species of animals, birds, and plants, reptiles became extinct, continuing a pattern that has continued for decades. According to the United Nations Environmental Program, our Earth is in the midst of a mass extinction of life. Scientists estimate that the rate of plant, insect, bird, and mammal extinctions is greater right now than anything that has happened since the dinosaurs vanished 65 million years ago. It feels as if we are in a position of heads we lose and tails we lose, as they may be hopeless. It seems like there's nothing we can do about it. And we humans are responsible. Not just because of climate change, which is caused by massive amounts of greenhouse gases being released into our atmosphere and causing temperatures to rise because the oceans cannot absorb the rate of CO2 we were pumping into our air. Environmental degradation is also the result of habitat destruction from farming, logging, and grazing, overfishing in the world's oceans, and the ever-increasing expansion of towns and cities and heavy industries. A growing and ever more consumerist human population has placed much of the world's wildlife, birds, animals, and reptiles, as well as plants and trees, under incredible stress. Understandably, the issue of rapid climate change occupies center stage in every discussion about environmental issues nowadays. Some of us may remember a few years ago the harrowing video that was taken by a National Geographic photographer of an emaciated polar bear scrubbing for food in garbage pails in the Alaskan tundra because the sea ice was not there, the sea ice from which the bears used to go out over to the ocean and hunt for fish had been lost. The polar bear population is declining rapidly because of the sea ice is no longer there. And sadly, these facts are being denied in so many places and in so many countries in our world. What seems like a matter of common sense, just like gun regulation seems like a matter of common sense, climate change has become a political controversy. I recently came across a scientific paper, well, it was more of a political assessment, a paper written by a French university professor in 2013. This professor is a professor at the University of Lyon in France. At least he was when he wrote it. The title of his paper was called "The Ideology of Climate Change Denial in the United States." You can do an internet search and with that, "The Ideology of Climate Change Denial in the United States," and you'll find the paper. The title alone made me sad. How could denial of climate change be an ideology? This author had done some stunning research into the American public dialogue. He found evidence of efforts of corporate America, mostly fossil fuel industries, to hinder environmental regulation of their activities. He documented the almost fanatical zeal of individuals on the extreme right who oppose any form of government regulation as a matter of principle because regulation interferes with freedom, regardless of the fact that their freedoms impose and infringe on the freedoms of others to have clean air and clean water to drink. And the author of the paper also identified people who simply deny that climate change is worth pursuing because our American way of life depends upon consumerism and ever-expanding material prosperity. We Americans, many of us, have chosen between consumerism over survival. There is, of course, overwhelming scientific evidence that climate change, due to human activity, is accelerating at an alarming rate. Climate change and environmental degradation are not only quality of life issues, they're existential. Our survival as a species and that of many other species are at risk if we don't do a better job of controlling our emissions of greenhouse gases and other pollutants. Last week I took delivery of Bill Gates' most recent book, a book just published 2 months ago in 2021. His book is called How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. He opens the book by pointing out that the world needs to go from pumping 51 billion tons of carbon dioxide, that's billion with a B, 51 billion tons of carbon dioxide pumped into the atmosphere every year. We need to reduce that to zero if we are to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And even then, it will be decades before the extra carbon dioxide in our atmosphere from the last 200 years will be absorbed into the ocean. In the meantime, the greenhouse effect will continue to cause temperatures to rise and the ice caps to melt. Heads we lose, tails we lose. And so we lament. Making the kinds of changes we need to avoid disaster will require leadership from the highest levels of government if we are to have any chance of staving off disaster. Individual actions, though laudable and important, will not be enough. And it's just very hard for us as individuals to make those kind of changes. I stand here feeling like a real hypocrite. I drive a car with a turbocharged engine. In the wintertime, I raise my central heating up because I hate being cold. In the summer, I raise my air conditioning because I hate the humidity and the heat. We need leadership to find ways to bring alternative forms of energy, because I don't see 7 billion people making the kind of choices that we need to make otherwise. So much for lament. What about celebration? Think of this. Think of that pale blue dot, how beautiful it is. Greta Thunberg's story, which Deb read from this morning, highlighted the fear that we have, the fear that comes from irreversible climate change. And much of what I've spoken about this morning has pointed out how dire it is. 200 years ago, our Unitarian Universalist forebears, the Universalists, pointed out that fear of hell is not really a deterrent, that people will sin anyway. Our Universalist forebears talked about universal salvation based on love, not upon fear. And so today, maybe instead of being motivated by fear of what's going to happen, maybe we could be motivated by love. The earth is beautiful. We don't need to make changes just because we want to survive as a species. We should make changes in what we do as a species because the earth deserves it, because the earth is beautiful. If we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we should affirm the inherent worth and dignity of our earth, our mother, just for its own sake, not because of some selfish desire to continue to exist, but because the earth needs us and deserves it. It is good and it is beautiful, and that's why we should cherish it and preserve it just for its own sake. And so for that reason we do celebrate as well as lament. Throughout Shakespeare's plays, there are many instances of Mother Nature being active in the world. So many of his plays involve great storms and shipwrecks and Mother Nature doing amazing things to the characters in the plays. And always the theme through the Shakespearean plays is that Mother Nature can't be beat. Mankind cannot beat the forces of nature. We are affecting nature right now by what we do, but eventually nature will beat us. We should remember that. And let us bring love and compassion, not just to one another, but to the environment and the world in which we live. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
We invite those at home who lit their own chalice candle to extinguish it at this time as we read aloud the words for extinguishing our chalice.
Our closing words are an excerpt from the Unitarian Universalist Statement of Conscience on Global Warming and Climate Change that were adopted by the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, in 2006, July of 2006. The Statement of Conscience begins with these words. Earth is our home. We are part of this world and its destiny is our own. Life on this planet will be gravely affected unless we embrace new practices, ethics, and values to guide our lives on a warming planet. As Unitarian Universalists, how can our faith inform our actions to remedy and mitigate global warming climate change? We declare by this statement of conscience that we will not acquiesce to the ongoing degradation and destruction of life that human actions are leaving to our children and grandchildren. We, as Unitarian Universalists, are called to join with others to halt practices that fuel global warming, climate change, to instigate sustainable alternatives, and to mitigate the impending effects of global warming, climate change with just and ethical responses. As a people of faith, we commit to a renewed reverence for life and respect for the interdependent web of all existence. May your roots grow deep in healthy soil. May your branches grow wide in healthy, clean air. Thanks for being with us today. I'm off next week. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Please join us next Sunday for our guest speaker who has a wonderful worship service ready for you. Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go in peace and go in love. Go in joy.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.